Hello everyone. Back again with film recaps. In this video, I'm going to recap one of the horror thriller films from 2025, titled The Ugly Stepsister. Before we get to the storyline, I'd like to wish everyone a happy and great day. Without further ado, let's get straight to the storyline. The movie opens in a historic time, where we meet a young girl named Elvira, daydreaming about her crush, Prince Julian. Moments later, someone wakes her up, and Elvira carefully clutches a poetry book written by none other than the prince. Next, Elvira, her younger sister Alma, and their mother, Rebecca, climb into a carriage, and head off somewhere. They soon arrive at their destination, where an old man named Otto and his daughter, Agnes, are waiting for them. Otto warmly welcomes them to the kingdom of Sweetlandia, while Elvira gazes at Agnes, and admires her beauty. It turns out that the old Otto and Rebecca are getting married that day. Afterward, Agnes takes Elvira to show her the house, and introduces her to a stable boy named Isak, who greets them awkwardly before rushing off. The girls soon arrive at Elvira's new room, which surprisingly has a view of Prince Julian's castle through the window. Agnes notices Elvira holding the prince's poetry book, so the latter confesses that he's her crush and that she wants to marry him. In the evening, the family gathers for dinner to celebrate the wedding. But suddenly, Otto throws a piece of cake at Elvira's face, leaving her humiliated, and everyone laughs as if it's a joke. However, the laughter fades when Otto suddenly begins gasping for air, and right at this moment, he vomits blood and collapses dead, leaving everyone shocked. The next morning, Agnes is in her room, crying and mourning her father. Elvira tries to comfort her by sharing the pain of losing her own father. But an upset Agnes snaps, revealing that her father would never have gone through with the marriage if they weren't so desperate for money. To Elvira's surprise, Agnes bitterly reveals that Otto only married Rebecca for her wealth. Upon hearing this, Elvira rushes to find her mother to inform her that Otto's family has no money, but she instead finds Rebecca with a group of lawyers, who coldly inform her they're now left with nothing but a few coins. After the lawyers leave, Rebecca is left shattered, as she had only pretended to be rich to trap Otto for his wealth. She wails that no rich man wants an aging woman with 2 daughters. Elvira says she can marry rich, but Rebecca bitterly reminds her how ugly she is, and no man will ever look at her. The next morning, a messenger from the castle arrives, and Elvira rushes outside in excitement. The man announces that the king and his son, Prince Julian, have invited all noble virgins to a ball at the castle. The ball will take place 4 months from now, and the prince will choose his bride there. The news excites both Agnes and Elvira, so they eagerly give their names to attend the event. The next day, Rebecca calls a doctor to prepare Elvira for the ball and fix her appearance. The doctor suggests removing her braces, taming her nose, and applying handmade eyelash extensions. Rebecca likes the idea, so she urges him to begin the procedure immediately, and promises to pay double after the ball. Next, the doctor performs a painful procedure on Elvira, without any anesthesia to remove her braces. After the removing procedure, Rebecca calmly browses a catalog, and picks the nose shape she wants her daughter to have. The doctor then takes a chisel, and drives it into Elvira's nose, causing her to scream in excruciating agony. But despite this, her mother watches with twisted satisfaction, while Alma sits frozen in horror. The scene then cuts to the finest finishing school in the kingdom, where several girls are enrolled to prepare for the ball. Elvira is among them, and her damn nose is tightly bound with a brace to carve the perfect shape. Soon, a woman named Madame Sophie arrives and warmly welcomes the girls. She reveals that anyone who performs exceptionally well in the first round will be selected to dance at the ballroom. She also reveals that in addition to the prince, there will be barons, merchants, and all of the wealthiest nobles from the kingdom. In the next scene, an instructor trains the girls on how to dance gracefully. Elvira gives her best effort, but the instructor remains unimpressed, and coldly tells her to move to the back. She invites Agnes to the front instead, causing Elvira to feel deeply humiliated. During dinner, the rest of the family enjoys delicious food, while Elvira is only served lemon water so she can lose weight. Agnes then asks Rebecca when they will conduct her father's funeral, to which Rebecca responds that they must wait until Elvira marries the prince. This enrages Agnes, who is aware of how expensive the doctor's procedures are to make Elvira look beautiful. She mentions that her father's body is rotting, while Rebecca spends money on everything except his funeral. But Rebecca still doesn't show any concern, causing Agnes to storm out of the dinner table. In the following days, the girls undergo intense training to prepare for the most important night of their lives. Soon, a list of those who passed and advanced to the next round is published. They rush to check, and many girls feel disappointment as they see they weren't chosen. Elvira also checks the list, and finds that someone else's name had been crossed out for hers to be written, hence she loses herself in fantasies of being with Prince Julian. In the next scene, the instructor performs a complex dance move. Up next, she asks if anyone can replicate it. Most of the girls eagerly raise their hands, but the instructor summons Elvira to the center. She nervously begins to dance, but the instructor soon stops her and begins insulting her. She reveals that she never wanted Elvira in the first place, but Rebecca had bribed them to keep her. The instructor then sends her to the corner, and summons Agnes and 2 other girls to dance. They perform beautifully, while Elvira just watches in silence and cries. In the evening, Rebecca brings some of Agnes's beautiful dresses for Elvira to try, but none fit her. The next morning, Elvira meets with Madame Sophie and breaks down, saying she feels hopeless, and no one will ever choose her because she's fat and ugly. Moved by her pain, Sophie assures her that she's brave, and that what's inside truly matters. She then gives Elvira a small gift, promising it will help her become more beautiful. Sometime later, Elvira meets with Alma, and shows her the gift from earlier, which turns out to be a tapeworm egg. Elvira explains that once she swallows it, she can eat whatever she wants, and still lose weight, since the parasite will consume her food. She even shows Alma a vial of antidote, claiming that once she becomes slim, she'll use it to get rid of the tapeworm. Alma finds this idea disturbing and urges her sister not to do this, which leads to an argument between them. In the end, an angry Alma storms off, while Elvira screams at her not to tell their mom. Afterward, Elvira stares at the tapeworm egg, and contemplates for a moment, before finally swallowing it. When she returns home in the evening, she hears strange noises coming from the horse stable, and is horrified to see Agnes and Isak entangled in a moment of intimacy. The next morning, Rebecca, who has found out about last night, is screaming at Agnes and calling her a whore. She brutally rips off her necklace. Meanwhile, Elvira is in her room, listening to everything while eating with satisfaction. Later, Agnes watches with tears as Rebecca kicks Isak out of the place naked. The scene then cuts to 3 months later, when Elvira finally takes off her brace. Her nose is now flawless and perfect. She also appears slim, all thanks to the tapeworm eating her from within. Elvira then glances out the window and sees poor Agnes, who is stripped of all rights and working like a slave in her own home. Later, we see Elvira at the doctor's clinic, who is impressed by her perfectly sculpted nose. The doctor then applies drugs to her eyes to relieve the pain before performing the gruesome surgery. He forces her to keep her eyes open, while lashes are sewed onto her eyelids, but Elvira still can feel intense pain and screams as the thread digs through her flesh. In the evening, she is overwhelmed with hunger due to the tapeworm, but can't see a thing as her eyes are still covered. She thus stumbles toward the kitchen to find some food, but soon hears footsteps approaching. It turns out to be Agnes, who, despite everything, feels bad for her stepsister, and offers her some food. The next day at finishing school, Madame Sophie and the instructor talk about Agnes, who hasn't shown up in months. But according to Rebecca, the girl won't leave her bed and is still grieving her father. Sophie suggests finding someone else to replace her, so the instructor scans all the girls in the room. In the end, she unexpectedly chooses Elvira, who now looks attractive enough to be lead dancer. In the evening, Elvira tries to brush her hair. But then, she is horrified to see it falling out rapidly. Sometime later, a visitor arrives at the house with a beautiful gown to make her look exceptional for the ball. Elvira tries on the dress, and her mom is stunned by how breathtaking she looks. But when the man approaches Elvira, he notices that her hair is too thin and falling. Rebecca grows tense with worry, but the man calms her down, and places a huge wig on Elvira to hide the damage. Later that night, Elvira feels extremely hungry because of the tapeworm and begins eating uncontrollably. Agnes, meanwhile, pulls out a beautiful gown as she plans to go to the ball secretly. But unfortunately for her, Elvira sees this and becomes jealous. The two begin fighting, during which Elvira grabs Agnes's gown and tears it to shreds. Just then, Rebecca shows up, and Elvira frantically explains how her stepsister is intending to go to the ball, but Rebecca tells her how can she go to the ball when she has nothing to wear. She then assures her daughter that she'll be the most beautiful girl there, and asks her to go to sleep. Elsewhere, we see Agnes holding her torn dress, crying beside her dad's corpse, which is now completely rotted and is being eaten by worms. All of a sudden, Agnes is shocked to see the spirit of her late mom appear in the form of a fairy. The mom magically fixes Agnes's dress using the worms, and also gives her a beautiful pair of shoes to attend the ball. But she warns the young girl that she must return home at midnight, as then her coach will turn into a pumpkin. The next evening, the much anticipated night of the ball finally arrives. Elvira, dressed elegantly, walks alongside her mother to make her grand entrance. The event soon begins, and each mother pushes her daughter forward for a marriage proposal. The girls emerge gracefully dancing, while a royal staff reads their resumes aloud. And then, comes the moment we have been waiting for, it's Elvira's turn. Everyone is mesmerized by her beauty, including the prince and his friends. Soon, the dance is about to start, and many men queue to be with Elvira. The prince then scans through several girls, until he finally reaches Elvira, and asks her out for a dance. The two begin having fun, and Elvira can't help but tear up, since this is all she's ever dreamed of. Everything seems perfect, until a girl enters the ballroom in a flowing blue dress and captures everyone's attention. The moment Julian sees her, he forgets Elvira entirely and walks straight to the new girl. She exudes an ethereal beauty, even though her face remains hidden beneath the veil. This leaves Elvira shattered, and to make matters worse, she begins to feel sick in her stomach. She stumbles to find the bathroom, but ends up vomiting on the way. She then discovers several tapeworm eggs in her vomit, making her skin crawl. When Rebecca approaches her, Elvira cries and reveals that she's going to die. But her mom doesn't seem to care, and asks her to pull herself together. She slaps Elvira hard, and says that even if not the prince, she still has a chance to seduce wealthy noblemen. Afterward, Elvira dances with several men, but her gaze is inevitably drawn to Julian, who is lost in dance with the new girl. Her eyes then flick to her mother, who is shamelessly flirting with multiple men and having the time of her life. At one point, Elvira's heart skips a beat when she notices the new girl without her veil. The shock hits her like a thunderclap when she realizes that it is none other than her stepsister, Agnes. At the same time, midnight strikes, so Agnes rushes out of the ballroom and the prince quickly follows in pursuit. Despite his frantic search, she vanishes into the night, leaving behind only her shoe, so the prince announces that he will marry the girl who will fit the shoe. When Elvira returns home, she immediately grabs a knife and heads straight for her stepsister, demanding the other shoe. The two girls fight fiercely, and Elvira eventually manages to overpower her stepsister. But just as she's about to stab Agnes, Rebecca appears and stops her, so Agnes seizes the chance to run away, leaving her other shoe behind. Elvira complains that it was Agnes who stole her prince, but Rebecca doesn't seem to care anymore, as she's brought a young man home and just wants to have some fun. She reminds Elvira that she had her chance and she missed it. Afterward, Elvira tries to force Agnes's shoes onto her feet, but they don't fit, leaving her frustrated. In a fit of madness, she places her toes next to the shoe to measure it. And then this happens. She chops them off. Her mother and sister hear her scream. Elvira, in a manic state, insists she must fit the shoes to marry the prince. But an apathetic Rebecca reveals that she has severed the wrong foot, because the prince has shoes for the left. As Elvira collapses from pain, her greedy mom takes the knife, and begins to sever the toes of her second foot as well. While unconscious, Elvira dreams of slipping on the shoe perfectly, and the prince choosing her to be his bride. But when she wakes up, she's shattered to see that every single one of her toes is gone. Just then, a royal messenger arrives outside and announces that the prince is here to try the shoe on all noble virgin girls. Upon hearing this, Elvira, who's unable to walk, begins crawling across the floor to meet him. She tumbles down the stairs, her head bald, and her teeth missing. Just then, she sees Agnes standing there in a beautiful dress. Agnes casts one final glance at her stepsister before stepping outside to meet the prince. Moments later, Elvira hears the prince say that the shoe finally fits, and he chooses Elvira as his bride. The heartbroken Elvira breaks down in tears, while Agnes and the prince share a kiss outside. Not long after, Elvira is approached by Alma, who suggests they should urgently leave this place. But they first decide to remove the tapeworm, so Elvira consumes the antidote given by Madame Sophie. Seconds later, she begins to violently vomit blood, after which the worm starts crawling out of her mouth. A horrified Alma grabs hold of it and begins pulling with all her strength. The long, slimy creature continues to come out, until it eventually piles across the floor, so Alma cuts it in half. After getting rid of the tapeworm, Alma heads to her mother's room to steal some jewelry. Rebecca, who's busy entertaining the young man, notices her daughter but ignores her. Alma then helps her sister get out of the house by holding her legs, while Elvira drags herself forward with her hands. She suggests they hurry up as they need to cross the border before nightfall. It is clear that Alma has freed Elvira from Rebecca's influence, and the cruel expectations of a world obsessed with unattainable perfection. Okay guys, thanks for watching. See you again in the next video.